Israel rescues 2 hostages from captivity in the Gaza Strip as they continue strikes on Rafah despite international warnings against. The Israeli military has rescued 2 hostages from captivity in the Gaza Strip early Monday, while a series of Israeli strikes hit Rafah overnight despite continued international warnings against bombarding the city in southern Gaza, initially designated a safe area by Israel for Palestinians. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu insists the action is vital to Israel's security.
אנחנו רוצים בעצם להביא לפירוז של הרצועה, והדבר הזה מחייב את השליטה הביטחונית ואת האחריות הביטחונית העליונה שלנו. אני אומר על כל השטח מערבית מהירדן, כולל רצועת עזה, אין תחליף לזה בעתיד הנראה לעין, ואנחנו אומרים את זה גם לקהילה הבינלאומית, גם לנשיא ארצות הברית, גם לכל המנהיגים, אין תחליף לזה.
On Sunday, the White House said President Joe Biden had warned Netanyahu that Israel should not conduct a military operation against Hamas in Rafah without a credible and executable plan to protect civilians. However, aid agencies said it's impossible as there is nowhere for them to go. The Hamas-run Aqsa television channel, meanwhile, quoted a senior Hamas leader saying any Israeli ground offensive in Rafah will blow up the hostage exchange negotiations.
He is officially Finland's newest president. On Sunday, after a close election runoff against ex-foreign minister Pekka Haavisto, former Prime Minister Alexander Stubb won the presidential bid. With all the votes counted, the center-right candidate of the National Coalition Party secured 51.6% of the votes, while independent candidate Haavisto from the Green Left secured 48.4%. As head of state, Stubb's main priority will be to steer the Nordic countries' foreign and security policies at a time when Europe faces significant political turmoil.
The starting point is that I want to see Finland in the core of NATO, that we are a security provider, not a security consumer, that we have a steadfast and strong support defense in the alliance with our 1,340-kilometer long border with Russia.
Stubb and Haavisto were the main contenders in an election where over 4 million people were eligible to vote.
We had two excellent candidates, and both of them would be a great president here in Finland, but the winning margin was quite close, so I think he has a lot of work to unify whole country. And
very proud of his victory. For me, those values, the liberal values that he presents, are really, really important in these times.
The Finnish president is expected to remain above the fray of day-to-day politics and largely stay out of domestic political disputes.
The Ukrainian city of Kharkiv has declared a day of mourning today for victims of the recent mass Russian airstrike, which claimed at least 7 lives, including 3 children, this weekend. Russian drones on Saturday hit a local oil depot, spraying nearby buildings with burning fuel. According to the local authorities, 15 residential buildings were burned down. On Saturday, the Russian Ministry of Defense published a video of Minister Sergei Shoigu visiting a drone production plant in the Udmurtia region, where he inspected new drone models. According to the Russian military, this enterprise has increased production by 60% since the beginning of the war. In Moscow on Saturday, wives of Russian soldiers gathered near the Kremlin wall. They demand the government bring back their husbands and stop the fighting. The Way Home movement is one of the only known anti-war protests in Russia, which is still not completely banned.
This is what remains of the village of Pretechine, set a dozen kilometers away from the front line in Ukraine's eastern region of Donetsk. Close to the city of Bakhmut, it's paid a high tribute to the war. Most of its inhabitants have evacuated to safer areas. Alexander is among the 20 villagers out of 150 who decided to stay, despite ongoing warfare and harsh living conditions. His house was under heavy shelling.
Даже просто благо, что не было дома. Был бы дома, все убило.
Alexander's wife left to a nearby city for safety, but he stayed on. He now lives in 2 small rooms.
Тут все висипане було, це все зроблено вже заново.
A former welder, he's now jobless and depends on the food and basic necessities delivered weekly by volunteers.
Так живу.
As we go back outside, we meet one of the soldiers operating in the area who came to pay a visit. He doesn't want to be identified.
Иду с позиции. Тяжело. Ведутся бои. Авдеевку пытаются захватить. Лезут. Война — это самая тяжелая работа, которая есть в этой жизни. Давайте. Пошел я дальше. Служить Родине. И вам хорошей дороги.
Whatever the risks, Alexander is confident that the Ukrainian soldiers will protect him.
Ну, думаю, побідимо і будемо відстраюватися, і щоб далі все було, як і було.
This hope makes you want to stay here. You don't want to leave whatever happens.
Це моя земля. Земля моїх батьків, дідів і прадідів. Чи я должен кудись йти? Тут кожен не остався пісібно вірив, що ми побідимо. І що війна закінчиться. Наша победа.
Well, one of the few people who decided to remain in the villages close to the front line are confident in their army. The situation remains tense, as you can hear from the explosions. And the Ukrainian military are bracing for any attempt from the Russians to gain this territory. Valerie Goria in the Donetsk region for Euronews.
Poland's farmers are on day 3 of a 30-day strike, holding a series of protests against EU climate policies and agricultural imports from Ukraine. They are blocking roads across the country until March 10th. On Sunday, Prime Minister Donald Tusk attended a meeting saying that the war in Ukraine cannot be an excuse for unfair competition. Farmers want Tusk's government to come up with new agricultural policies which will ensure the sector's profitability. Over 500,000 Berlin residents took to the polls on Sunday as part of a partial rerun of Germany's 2021 Bundestag election. The repeat comes following a decision from the Federal Constitutional Court, which found that significant errors occurred during the initial ballot 2.5 years ago. Some parties, such as the centre-right CDU and the far-right AfD, saw a slim increase in their percentage points. However, once all the votes were counted, the majority in the Bundestag remained unaffected.
After I take train, I go to St. Petersburg. Then I go to hostel there. I wait maybe 2 days to 3 days. Then after I go to another city, Viborg city. Then I buy from there a bicycle. Then after I come to Finland. The police and the arms they help us. So it's good for us because it's so easy. You come here.
We have information of that there are in the St. Petersburg area thousands of persons who might come to Finland. Using this route, we know that we have to open the borders, or at least some of them in some time, because this cannot go forever. But we are in the same time drafting changes to our legislation who make us better prepared to this situation when it arose again.
Kansas City Chiefs have won a second straight Super Bowl after a tight match against the San Francisco 49ers. The outcome was only decided during overtime, which made it the longest Super Bowl game of all time. The final score was 25-22. Pop star Taylor Swift was spotted watching her Chiefs boyfriend Travis Kelce. Meanwhile, R&B singer Usher headlined the halftime show musical extravaganza, performing some of his biggest hits.
Marathon world record holder Kelvin Kiptum and his coach died in a car crash in western Kenya late on Sunday. Kenyan media reported that a third person, a woman who was in the car, was taken to the same hospital with serious injuries. Kiptum was 24 and was the first man to run the marathon in under 2 hours 1 minute. He set the new world record of 2 hours and 35 seconds at the Chicago Marathon in October, beating the mark of fellow Kenyan Eliud Kipchoge.